Hey folks, this is Jesse Cope back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are and whatever part of the day you're in. I sure do appreciate you joining me as always, giving me a little bit of your time. For those of y'all that continue to share the podcast, tell others about it. I'm incredibly grateful for that. I will try to use your time wisely. For those of y'all that have joined over on Patreon and are financially supporting the podcast and the continued encouragement that you give, thank you so much. Before I get too far gone, Lord, thank you for the time to record this podcast, the people who listen to it and share it. Thank you for the words of those who have come before us. Help us to turn back to you, Lord, as a nation. Help us to help those that have less than we do. Guide my words today. Be with those who listen. Be with their families, their friends. Help us to seek you and your kingdom and your righteousness first always. To love you with our whole heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Trying to get a little fire going while we do this to grill some turkeys. I'm sure you can hear in the background. Think that they need to be part of the conversation, obviously. And the dogs are on the porch. That's really about it. So, we'll get going. We are going to talk a little bit today about the privilege of voting. And then I almost can assure you that tomorrow we are going to spend some time talking about, well, we'll see. We'll see. I'll leave that for tomorrow if we get there. So, we're going to start off with a quote that we have used recently. We use frequently on this podcast. And I think really it illustrates, I know it illustrates the main problem that we're having across the country today. And of course, the question is, can I find it? There we go. And this is from John Jay. Many of y'all that have listened to the podcast for a long time, you know this quote. Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. We've talked about this a number of times. Probably we'll finish off the podcast today with that. The bottom line is we have a responsibility as a Christian nation to elect Christian men in particular. Yes, men in particular. You can call that sexist or misogynistic all you want. That's the way it is. It's the way it was designed by God. And if we don't do that, right, then there's going to be problems. And that is exactly what we see today. We see it across, it's cross-institutional. See it in the military. We see it in education. My father has decided to drive down the road, which is good. Going to come grill some with us. But we see the problem here, folks. And if you're honest at all, it doesn't take much to look at the world today and see this issue. We have gone away from God. We've gone away from electing Christian rulers. We've gone away from putting them in positions of power in the country. And it's having a devastating effect. So, we're going to go through some other quotes that I have not used quite so often, and we'll come back to that one for sure. This is an excerpt, so a lot of our excerpts lately have come from the America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotes, but I recommend, as often as I can think of it, the Founders Bible and the Patriots Bible. They're all three great resources. I had to take a break for a second. You'll never understand this really well, at least I didn't, until you have kids, and then everybody seems to need you all at the same time. But everybody, like, you become the center of your parents need you, then the kids need you, then the animals need you. Everybody needs you at the same time. It's great. It's great to be needed. So this is coming from the Patriots Bible. This little excerpt to start with. Benjamin Rush, one of America's founding fathers, said every citizen of a republic must watch for the state as if its liberties depended upon his vigilance alone. The most basic democratic participation of citizenry is voting. When we vote, we help determine who will lead the nation, make the laws, and protect our liberties. Unfortunately, the church and people of faith often vote at an alarmingly low rate. When people of faith fail to vote, is it any wonder that policies are enacted that are contrary to the core values, to believers' core values, which are the core values of the nation? Not participating in the civic and political arenas not only violates historical precedent, but ignores what America's leaders have always taught. And so here's some. For example, if America is to survive, we must elect more God-centered men and women to public office. Individuals who will seek divine guidance in the affairs of state. Billy Graham. We've talked about Graham a couple times. One of our great spiritual leaders, 20th century. And, his comment there, and there's biblical precedent for female leaders, but it really seems to be tied with, and I'm not a theologian, folks, y'all can go in and read your own, but it certainly seems to be tied to times when men refuse to stand up. That's how you end up with just any number, pick your poison. Female pastors, right, in the church. That's how you end up with females leading in military, for example. That's how you end up with women, quote, leading, unquote, in homes. And it all basically goes back to men not being willing to stand up and do what they were supposed to do. And in the case of voting, if we don't have men, and particularly Christian men, that are willing to stand up and do their job, then others are going to step in. And it's always going to be lesser than it should be and more problematic than it should be. And it has the potential, which is what we see today, to be really bad. And you go back to John Jay's quote, if we're not going to elect Christians for our rulers, and it's not only our privilege, but it's our duty, we're going to have problems. See if I can get this next one. The time has come that Christians must vote for honest men and take consistent ground in politics. God cannot sustain this free and blessed country, which we love and pray for, unless the church will take the right ground. It seems sometimes as if the foundations of the nation are becoming rotten, and Christians seem to act as if they think God does not see what they do in politics. Charles Finney. I wish I could remember Finney. I've got a picture of him in my head, and I cannot tell you. I think 1800s, but I'm not even positive about the century, folks, which is a shame. That's part of the problem. We forget where we came from, which is a quote we talked about recently. But two things. One, you see the difference in tone, and it doesn't have anything to do with sexism or misogynistic attitudes. But the idea of women leading was a foreign concept politically or in the homes when this great nation was founded. And that tells you something. This idea of when we started to throw in men and women in the military, or men and women leading in the home, or men and women leading politically, This is a modern idea, and it's been at times when we have started to degrade as a nation. And so that's one part of it. The second part is what, just the basic what he said. If we're not going to take up correct ground, if we're not going to stand firm and elect God-centered men to lead, God's going to notice. You go back to Thomas Jefferson's quote when he was referring to slavery about he trembled for his country because he knew that God was just and God's justice wouldn't sleep forever. There's going to be a price to pay when we elect people that don't have God's commands at the core as their base values. And that's exactly what we've done today. And we've tried to justify it by this relativistic attitude. Well, at least they're not so and so. Well, at least they're not this person. And that's how you get where we are today, by saying, well, at least they're not as bad as so and so. And that's such a horrible attitude, folks. That's how the left makes ground. That's how socialism, communism, fascism, leftism, Nazism, that's how they make ground, is by making things relative and moving the goalposts, changing the standard. Well, yeah, this isn't right where we're supposed to be, but man, we're real close and we're a lot better than these folks over here. That's why in the church so often you hear really good pastors talk about, don't look at other people. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to Jesus Christ. Because when you do that, when you compare yourself to perfection, when you look toward perfection, then you're always striving toward that goal. When you compare yourself to others and say, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person, that may be true. All people are not equally good and bad. That's a complete fallacy. That's not what Christ taught. He taught specifically about it being better and worse. Certain people, certain cities and towns being better and worse, right? That's why all religions are not equal. There's only one true religion. And so this quote from Finney, you've got to stick to those the values of God have to be at the center, the core of our voting. Now more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand these high qualities to represent them in the national legislature. President James A. Garfield. It's a great quote. We've talked about it before. It's been quite a while. Gosh, I despise that when I do. This is exactly what has happened today. We see that. We have become a people of low moral character as a whole. We have elected people of low moral character. And so when we look at Congress and we say, man, Congress, they're so ignorant, they're so reckless and corrupt. Well, Congress is including the president, including the Supreme Court, are a representation of who? Us, we the people. And so before we get on our high horse and we say, man, these elected politicians, they're horrible. Okay, well, who elected them? And you say, well, I didn't do that. Well, what are you doing, though? Are you out there talking to your friends, neighbors, relatives? Are you making radical changes in your own life? And this is probably something we will talk. I talked with our pastor briefly this weekend. If we're not going to make radical changes in how we live our individual lives, then why would we expect to see radical changes in our faith, in our marriages, and our families? And so if we're not going to go out and demand that we have these values in place, and when I say demand, I'm certainly not talking violently, but say, look, this is who I'm going to vote for, right? And there's got to be a candidate out there that is God-centered. And that's who I'm going to find, and that's who I'm going to vote for every single time. And not only that, okay, so if there's not a God-centered candidate, I'm going to vote for the best one I can, right? But I'm going to start to make some fundamental changes in my own life. Because how do you lead? How do you lead? I was reminded of this by my father recently. You lead by example. In your home, in your job, in the Marine Corps, wherever you are, you lead by example. You do what's right. And God, there's a great quote by President John Quincy Adams along these lines. You do what's right, and you leave the rest up to God and let him worry about it. And if other people follow your lead, great. And if they don't, you keep following Christ's lead. Got one more quote, but I'll tell you what, I think we're going to wrap up for today. We'll come back to it tomorrow. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about a couple of these other topics. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. We'll talk to y'all again real soon, folks. Looking forward to it.